Welcome to the Guava Vet blog. We are very fortunate today to welcome Dr. Jana Pretorius from the Rhino Vet Foundation. Jana is a specialist wildlife veterinarian and also a founding member of the Rhino Proud Foundation. Jana, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to the Guava Vet blog. Why don't you begin by introducing yourself and telling us what you do?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I started hand rearing little rhino, baby orphan rhinos about, I would say 14 years ago, no more, 18 years ago. And I think my passion for rhinos started there. I've been in the wildlife industry for about 20 years as I do game capture, treatments, reproductive work, etc. in wildlife. And but I was sort of a little bit, I'm always one to study, let me put it that way, and I've always been intrigued by so many things. So I also studied in forensic science, and I don't know if you know this, but this year I'll be finishing my LLB. And yes. so but it's, you can see our whole family is like that. My sister Liesel is exactly the same, has so many different degrees. My father was like that in a big way. And yeah, so I actually am not working full-time, I would say, as a wildlife vet, or maybe I am in a specific way. I run a rhino sanctuary and orphanage, and we are busy building a purpose-built wildlife hospital. And yeah, and then I do work for a cheetah conservation and lion rehabilitation facility. And so I do a fair bit of wildlife work, but I'm also...
So it's not only rhino work that you do. There's, you know, it's wildlife, other species as well. Is it mostly rescue, or is it treatment? You know, say for example, game farm animals.
It will be, well, it is commercial work in a smaller percentage. But then most of my work now is with the rhinos at our facility, which is both a rehab and a sanctuary. So we have high security sanctuary. And then with the cheetahs and lions, that's a breeding facility, but also a rehab facility with lions and other wild cats that's been confiscated, etc. So my work has become more rehabilitation and treatment of animals that have been in, I can almost say, in conflict zones. But yeah. Poaching is a huge problem, so that's where we come in now.
So, but let's just go back a little bit. So, you qualified as a veterinarian. During that time at Onderstepoort at the University of Pretoria, where I know you from, did you know from the beginning that your professional life would be in wildlife rather than, say, companion animals or farm animals? When did this, was it always there? Was there a change?
No, it's very easy answer, actually. I told my parents when I was 5 I was going to be an animal doctor, and I was 12 when I told them I was going to be a wildlife vet. So it never changed.
Well, that's amazing, because I think my life changed like 6 or 7 times, and in the end, you know, I thought I'd never want to be a small animal veterinarian. I always want to be a wildlife veterinarian. Well, there you go. So tell us a little bit more about what the Rhino Proud Foundation does, the work they do, where you are involved, the areas, for example.
So we are pretty much looking to help private owners who has problems with either security or with poachings and all. And so we are receiving, for example, almost 60 rhinos soon from another rhino owner that he just can't afford the security anymore because it's so expensive. And with the security being so expensive, people put them in smaller areas, then your feed costs goes up. So we try and provide a safe haven for people where we cover those costs, and we sort of put a lot of people's animals together, but then so we can minimize the cost in total per animal. And we help private owners also when there are emergencies to go out to them, treat the animals. And I also receive animals that are injured or shot. I've got one specific bull that recently came. He's still got a bullet in his leg. We're still trying to figure out where to take it out because it also cracked his elbow and in the process. So, but we do emergency work specifically for private owners, but also actually I look after government rhinos as well, municipality rhinos. I pay for the security for them. And yeah, so we try and help where we can because we know that at the moment with the poaching that's been so bad, people don't realize and government doesn't want to release the true state of affairs. They still work on numbers in 2015 when they do reports, etc. And we know that there are probably less than 2,000 rhinos in total left in, for example, Kruger National Park. And they will still say they have 4, 5, 6,000 animals. And then in other parks, the same. Some parks don't even know how many rhinos they have because their management is so poor. And so we reckon that we have there's at least or almost 70% of the rhinos in this world that are left, white and black rhino, are actually in private ownership. And a lot 70%. Of people don't, people don't realize this. So we have to look after the private rhino owners because they've been doing the best job so far. And we see a massive onslaught now at the moment, again, on the private owners. The poachers were focusing on national parks and provincial parks, but they've started now focusing. This past full moon was horrendous with the private rhino owners, even with guards. The problem is most people can't afford to have an Alcatraz to look after their rhinos. And that's pretty much what we've set up here. So now we can go up to, I think, about 100 rhinos, but then we'll have to find a bigger place. And we're almost there. When the next lots of rhinos come, we're 70% there. And it's just not getting better. And people don't understand that this is not going to stop till they're gone. And then they're going to start just with something else. They've already started poaching elephant and lion in Kruger, but they keep it quiet because firstly, the elephants are too many in any case, and the lions have TB, so they sort of don't, because otherwise it will just make the picture more negative towards them and for their funding that comes from overseas. And I am outspoken about this because they are not doing their job. They have so many inside jobs and there's no political will to change it really. The few people that are trying to do their best, they get worked out very fast because the syndicates are all inside. So anyways, so we can forget about our government helping us. And that's why I started Rhino Pride, is to help private owners and to try and start almost collecting as many rhinos as possible to eventually put them on big free range but high security reserves, which we have a project that we hope to have soon. But at this rate, we're not going to have any rhinos left if we don't do something fast. Now, this I've been saying actually for about 12 years already. It's like we need to have these high security zones. And this is how government is helping us. They've just released a report. They want to get rid of these semi-intensive high security zones because it's not natural. But the rhinos in the wild are getting slaughtered. And I want to say it's hopeless for the rhinos out in the wild, but that's why the private owners are really trying to fight this battle. And that's where we come in. We try and help.
Is it a similar situation across the continent where we find the black and the white rhino? Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe. Let's keep to Southern Africa then, at least for now. Is the situation similar everywhere? Is the South African situation slightly better, worse, compared to the rest of, or just at least our neighbors in Southern Africa? What does the situation look like there?
They just have a lot lower numbers of animals, so it doesn't come across as so bad because they don't have that many. But the percentage-wise, I would say it's the same. even Botswana, where they have a shoot to kill policy towards poachers. Namibia keeps it fairly quiet as well, but they also only have about, I think, 400 or 500 rhinos in total, black and white. The rest of Africa is almost decimated. They've taken a few back to places like Zambia, etc., but they are being protected with people with AK-47s 24/7, because you only have about 6 or 7 there. That would make it a bit easier. But because we have the bulk of the rhino in South Africa, we are targeted the most. And one thing people don't realize, they always throw together the numbers for black rhino, but actually there are 3 very distinct subspecies, and there's only about 1,000 to 1,500 of each left. So when they say black rhino, there are 5 or 4,500 or whatever left. They forget that's not entirely true. It's 1 to 1,500 of each subspecies. The white rhino, I think if we in total in this world, in Africa, have 8,000 left, that's a lot. But they will tell you still, International Rhino Foundation has been on 20,000 or 23,000 for, I think, about 20 years. I don't think they update the numbers or the true situation, because we don't have that many rhinos.
Well, is there any, it's obviously very depressing. Are there any success stories out there? You know?
Yes, there is actually. There's one place that many years ago, a guy with vision got the East African black rhino in South Africa. And that's the only subspecies that's, the numbers are growing. Again, because they're in a privately owned reserve that's got very good security. So there are some cases, that's the only species or subspecies of rhino that is actually increasing. But it's a slow increase, because rhinos only have a calf once every 2.5 to 3 years. So it's a slow growth.
Maybe just, I'm not sure that everybody who will be watching this knows exactly the situation with regards to the actual market for rhino horn. What's the point? Why? Maybe if you could just sort of explain who wants where's the need, where's the market, and what do they want it for?
Originally, we all knew that they would, for the Middle East, it would be dagger handles. Then in China, it would be traditional medicines, and it was mainly for fevers, rheumatoid arthritis, impotence, and a few other diseases. But actually, the new market has been created, and I always like to put the analogy of De Beers and diamonds. So the biggest market now is actually, it's the luxury goods, it's jewelry, and it's a sign of power. So this is exactly what De Beers did with Diamonds Are Forever. They created a market for something that's actually just a piece of carbon, if you want to put it that way. And look at all the horrendous stuff that happens with diamonds, with kids that are in slavery underground, people being killed for diamonds. So now you have exactly the same thing with rhino horn, because the syndicates have created that market. And then the main market is actually Vietnam and also Korea. They reckon the medicine market is only about 20% of the whole market, and the luxury goods is the main one. So
I must say that I didn't know that. I thought honestly that the main markets were basically traditional medicine, and yes, and the daggers.
Well, I also like to tell people that we're looking at this, they keep on putting a ban on this. I'm not necessarily pro-trade, but if you look at what they're doing now, they're creating scarcity, and that's how you create something to have a high value. And the syndicates are stockpiling as well. So unless we find a way of dealing with it, diamonds were the same. They created that control to determine how much goes into the market. If you look at emeralds, then there are not really any restrictions on it. So there's not as much problems with it, because it's not as scarce, and it's not as expensive, and it's not as much of a status symbol, because it's more freely available to trade with.
Well, it's a situation of supply and demand, but the problem is that so once they've created this market and created the scarcity situation that people want that product that is scarce to showcase wealth and power, and then they control what's released into the market, and therefore the high prices. So do you think that a controlled market of rhino horn would be a sustainable option?
I've always been anti-trade till we were in the thick of things. And then I realized the solution that CITES proposed has actually never stopped the poaching. The poaching was just more up in Africa and quieter. And people were not paying attention to it because of this lack of media information from Central Africa, etc. But that's why we don't have any more rhinos almost in Central Africa and East Africa. They had to import again, and those that they have to really look after. But even in the 90s and going a little bit back with CITES, there was poaching up to the numbers of like 5,000 rhinos a year. So, but nobody spoke about it. And my reasoning is, do you keep on trying? Would you change the situation if you keep on trying the same solution that's not working? I also don't believe on selling the raw horn on a central selling organization, which the private owners are now, or they've always been suggesting. I think they are not thinking about this clearly, because this is the same as what we did with our iron. We sell the raw product to other countries, and then we have to buy back steel, and that's why you pay so much for steel. It's ridiculous how much we pay for steel. We should only sell the end product, and for that we already have existing channels, and that's what people don't realize. Because I went to Vietnam for a specific reason, and one of the guys, they explained to me that if you want to sell, for example, jewelry from South Africa, you have to be registered in South Africa and in Vietnam. There's a specific trade pathway that you have to follow. So you can only sell jewelry from South Africa if you're registered jeweler in Vietnam and with South Africa. The same with the pharmaceutical companies. You know how the MCC and internationally how they work with drugs. Those channels exist. So why are we trying to sell the raw horn when we could actually have a value-added chain in South Africa? You create jobs, carving,
Absolutely.
the work, you make the medicine, you sell it through. I know it's probably not working. And they say, how do we want to stimulate the market? And I was like, well, especially on the luxury goods, we can't do anything about that anymore. Unless we make it so easily available, it loses its value. Now, we don't have that many rhinos left, but there are a lot of stockpiles. And then, so if you were to do that, South Africa would earn VAT on the different levels of trade with starting from the beginning. It is fairly easy with all the permit systems to register a breeder of rhino. So you would only register him to sell rhino horn if he ticks the boxes. He must be breeding animals. He can't put and take. He has to have, say, for example, specific size area. He has to have specific security measures. That's just like, you can control that part, because the farmers are actually the law-abiding citizens, and they getting the most hammered by the international animal rights groups. And by the way, I do not believe in animal rights groups, because they don't care about animal welfare. They just care about their own pockets when they're fundraising. I don't know if you might want to delete this, but I am happy to say it in public.
So I think there will need to be a bit of a paradigm shift, because I can now imagine just what you said with regards to having a controlled market is, and the animal rights organizations will then say, but these animals are then being exploited, because harvesting rhino horn is quite an involved process. So I can think that there will be an outcry about that, to say, well, now what you're creating is you're creating a market that will definitely exploit the rhino, in the sense that their horns will be harvested.
You say it's involved process. It takes 20 minutes from dart to wake up to take a horn off. That is not, and if you do it only every 2 years or every 3 years, it's not such an involved process as people think. People don't realize it's horn trimming. It's not, and that's one thing a lot of people, even South Africans, don't know. So I'm going to
I
mention
guess,
is
I
that
guess it's
grows.
it grows, yes, and I guess it's very important to then compare a controlled anesthetized trimming of the horn to the alternative, which is the hacking
Yes.
by the poacher.
Yeah. And the
So,
only
so my, I would then say to the animal activists is that, you know, you need to be pragmatic then and consider the alternative.
Can I tell you, I've only met one woman who started off with massive demand reduction campaigns to ban any products of animals being traded. And then she turned around and she has now changed her stance because she did the research and she said, no, it's not going to work. But what I ask animal rights groups is, how many rhinos do they physically protect? Do they even own a rhino? Now, I don't know if you know who's Thomas Sowell. He's an American economist. He's about 90 now. He's still as sharp as anything. And
Sowell economics, yes.
He said, the biggest mistake you can make is to leave the decision-making process in the hands of those who carry no consequence.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening now. All the animal rights groups are getting their say in, and they sort of lump all the private owners in one vote, for example, whereas each big animal rights group have a vote almost in the same. But they're not the ones who carry the risks. They're not putting money there. I've got a few groups that I would class almost as animal rights groups, but they put their money where their mouths are, and they don't judge. And if people start judging private owners and say, oh, they just want to make money, I want to ask you, anybody who's got an economic background, would you have invested in a product, a rhino, for 20, no, okay, let's put it 15 years already, no longer, yeah, 15 years, when you can't get any income from them, and it's like a bottomless pit? Would that make sense that they're only in it for the money? They would have sold it a long time ago and invested in Bitcoin, for example. They're not in it for the money. I can tell you, I see how owners cry when their animals are being shot. They cry over the babies. It's not about money, but people need money to protect them.
Absolutely.
So I know it doesn't feel like the ideal situation, but we're flogging the same dead rhino now for how long with banning the trade? And it's a product that grows. It's not a dehorning. We try and move away from the term dehorning. It's actually just horn trimming, because it's cutting your nails and it grows. And people don't understand.
I think that's a very important thing, is that it needs to change the perspective. I think that the terminology needs to change, that it is not dehorning, it is horn trimming. On the other hand, you know, if you say it's horn trimming, you know, it may be that people would say, well, then the poachers still think, well, there's a little piece left that we still can get.
Yes, there is. There always is. So even when they trim the horns for security, they still can get poached. The difference will be that people will have money to put into security. Let me put it this way, just our guards per month cost us 160,000 rands a month. So that isn't including the infrastructure, the vehicles, the extra staff that we have that monitors that, etc., etc. So,
and let's not forget for a moment that those guards are risking their lives, aren't they?
Yes. People don't understand. We've seen the human cost is not just the possibility of death, it's also the post-traumatic stress. If they did shoot somebody, the guys are becoming alcoholics, they beat their wives, their kids. This happens, and people are not understanding that. And if you've shot somebody, man, that is not easy to live with, especially if you don't have the right support structures for that.
Which also costs money, which simply there isn't enough of.
Yeah. And a lot of our projects are now focusing on trying to, it's not always just about the rhinos, it's also about the people. So we're also empowering our own staff, because we want them to be happy, because then they will be loyal. But we're starting with projects in the township, because they're the ones who will then eventually be loyal if we can improve their lives. We have some amazing projects that another nonprofit will be running for us that they've done in a few places, that like the honeybee project. There's not so much time, so I won't go into that, but that's somebody that's got an amazing vision how to empower people, how to improve their lives on their own with no money. And he's a very special guy, but and his name is Guy. And he can speak about 7 African languages. So, but anyways, but that's what we aim for. And even with the Khoisan project that we want to do in the Northern Cape, where we want to have these large high security reserves, even there, it will be actually focusing on the people first, because unless you increase people's general well-being, health, wealth, and economic and educational status, you will never win this war. Because people will listen, the poachers that they're catching are driving Ford Mustangs. They have K-way jackets and backpacks, and it's all brand new. They wear the most expensive shoes. It's not about people being hungry anymore. Now it's become a very lucrative mafia type thing. They are so clever. They swap guns between gangs. They swap things between gangs. It is unreal.
So if we look at the future, it seems to me from if I will hazard a summary here, that by having some sort of controlled trade, you will supply a market because they are there. There's nothing you can do about it. But there's a very good chance that you will be able to, save the rhino for future generations and lift people out of poverty by creating jobs and products in South Africa. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Yes, there is. That is. I have 2 things to say. Societies actually, they're also not always equal. Why are animals seen at different levels? Everybody and all animals are supposed to be equal. So we allow people to shave a sheep for the, although I know some of the animal rights groups also want to stop that. But how is it different? That's also stressful for them. We actually slaughter animals for meat. And then if you look at CITES rules, they allow Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 animals to be traded when they're captive bred. Look at the crocodiles that almost went extinct, and they now fine because they made rules. They said, okay, you only allowed so many babies out of the wild, and then you have to put back every year so many babies back into the wild. And they went to Louis Vuitton and Versace and whoever else uses the leather from the crocodiles, and they said, please only buy from these farms that where we control, and we don't take crocodiles out of the wild anymore. That's worked amazingly well. We look at African greys, they used to be CITES 1. We look at so many other animals where they allow the trade, even when...
So has banning worked anywhere with anything at all? Is there a success story about something being banned and it worked?
No, because look at cigarettes, alcohol. Whenever you ban it, the underground market we saw it now in COVID. It just grew. I mean, people made millions, and other people were starving. So it's never worked, because the moment you ban it, people are like naughty children. They want it.
Okay, well, now, about the future. Is it hopeless? Surely it can't be hopeless yet.
If it was hopeless, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Okay, now that's very good news. So why don't you, we've got a few minutes left, tell us about your new purpose-built wildlife hospital that you'll be doing.
So when I originally started in the wildlife industry, and I then specialized in wildlife medicine, I started realizing that everybody is, when they work with wildlife, they pretty much practicing almost, I call bush medicine. So it's like you do what you can, but it's limited because it's always in the veld, and people don't have hospitals or practices that are equipped to take in wildlife and to be able to manage them without freaking them out in one way. But then especially it became bad as the poaching started increasing. We saw more and more animals being injured in a way that you actually need a theater to be able to treat them properly and operate properly. And even a few cases where there's been colics, in especially the orphan baby rhino, then they always have to go to Onderstepoort. And because we have the sanctuary and the rehab facility, I felt there is a need to have a specific purpose-built hospital. So special room, like a stable, but that's padded, not just for inductions, but also to treat some of, especially the orphan rhinos, because they very often are only lying down and they're on intravenous food and drips. And I need to be able to work with them without them also killing me, because that's been the biggest problem, especially the larger calves. And then also to be able to operate on a big rhino like the one we have that's got the bullet in his leg. We need to take that out at some point because he's so lame. There must still be effect from the bullet. And I have a suspicion that, for example, it's between the radius and ulna, and that's why he can't put a lot of weight on his leg. But so looking at how we've always done it, I want to do it a little bit better. I think the zoos internationally, they have the better model. A lot of them do have purpose-built hospitals, and I've seen a few of them. And I felt that we need one here for the sanctuary and even just for the area, because I would make it available to other vets if they needed the theatre, even for horses and cattle, because there aren't any other theatres around here for large animals.
So caring for these animals that are in such peril.
Yeah. And these animals are stressed and they are freaked out, usually suffers from PTSD. And how to get them, because each one has got a different personality. And make no mistake, rhinos are their personalities differ so much. It is unbelievable. And you have to start to learn how to read them and know what to do. So half of what I do, for example, with the calves is improvise for each rhino, because each one is different. It's unbelievable how there are some basics that say this stays the same, but how they start drinking the first time, how they respond to your voice the first time. It is unbelievable how they each differ. I have two babies that are pretty much the same age. The one I got at 3 weeks, the other one at 6 months. I mean, Adam, the one I got, because it's always easier when they're younger, he's the sweetest thing ever, but he gets so hangry. He becomes a monster almost with feeding times. Whereas Eve, she's not so sure if she likes people, but I managed to get her to drink from me. Even in any other case, she would not allow me to touch her. I've only been allowed to rub her belly, I think 3 times. She's been here almost 5 months, 6 months. So you have to be prepared to end up with a lot of scars. That is going to happen.
Something to be proud of.
I have so many scars. I got gangrene on one wound once. That was terrible.
So before we stop, maybe if you could just tell us what it is that is the favorite or the best part. What is that makes you get up every morning and say, I'm ready, I'm excited to do this today?
Oh, wow. That's a difficult one, because it's so many things. I actually don't even think about it. It's almost like it is my life. It's not my job. It is my life. And I've always felt that way about veterinary science in a big way. So, but with the rhinos, after I hand-reared my first baby, his name was Ronnie, I realized I was done. It's my life is about rhinos. So many people save me on their phones as Rhino Vet or Dr. Rhino, or it's not even, that's how I'm remembered, purely because that's all I almost talk about. It's a little bit like a little girl and Hello Kitty or Barbie or something probably. But I think it's the love that they showed me that they have. It's quite, you think they're very stoic animals, but they are actually tremendously loving, and they will die if they don't have company, and that's a fact.
Jana, is there any thing that the viewers can do? Are you fundraising? Where can we get more information?
Well, we are always fundraising. We have a website where you can donate online with a credit card, Bitcoin, anything. It's www.rhinopridefoundation.org.
I'll put that in the show notes, a link for you.
Thank you. And then also we have Instagram. I think all the links are there, just Rhino Pride Foundation, etc. So yeah, please, if you want to support us, a bag of milk for the babies is 1,100 rands a bag, and they drink one bag in 2 days at the moment. So it's expensive, and like I explained, with the security and the infrastructure, it's very much appreciated if people do donate. And then in future, I hope to see some of you guys come and visit me. So you still owe me a visit in any case.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So if you said you wanted to do wildlife work, actually, then I can ask you to come and locum for me when I want to go on holiday.
I must say, I think my experience with regards to that is exceptionally limited. The only wildlife I see are little birds. Jana, it's been such a pleasure, and thank you so much for all the work that you do. I don't think many people understand emotionally what it takes to be able to do this, and you are fighting the fight on the front line to make sure that our children, our children's children, will one day have the pleasure that I've had all my life thus far, and to go see these animals in the wild. So thank you so much, Jana. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.